Welcome to the DDI podcast, where we continue our mission to demystify the misconceptions around the digital infrastructure sector. I'm your host, Mark Yields, the Vice President here at Schneider Electric for our Secure Power division. And today I'm really pleased to welcome David Watkins, the Solutions Director at Virtus Data Centers, a company which is quickly growing across the UK and Europe, powering the new phases of both cloud and AI. So welcome, David, to the podcast.
Thank you.
One of the things that I like to do when we have guests on the show is try to get to know them a little bit better. So tell me, how on earth did you end up in this world?
Like most things, not planned. So I decided to leave school at 16 and not go down the academic route to university. I joined a life assurance company that is in the town where I grew up. Within a year, a job came up within the IT department, which I applied for and got. Ended up working in IT operations. So this is back in the early 80s. So during the sort of privatisation boom, our company was acquired by Lloyd's TSB.
Okay.
Who then decided to outsource the IT because they're a financial institution, not an IT company, to an American services company called Unisys. So I got transferred over there as part of the deal. In the number of years that I was there, I was working in outsourcing. So I worked across a whole range of different industry verticals, airlines, defence, diamond producers, one of the world's largest coffee companies, food production. The biggest contracts I ran there was for the Met Police, running the 999 service, which brought its own unique set of challenges, but it was also
I can imagine.
Also very rewarding. At the end of my time there, I was head of data centres for the UK and Europe, and I was asked to identify and deliver a new corporate data centre for the company, which was the first time I've been involved in that, which I did. And then that led to me being approached by Virtus, who I work for now, initially as operations director. So I was hired to come on board and help with the design and the build of our first two data centres. The first one of which was kind of similar to what we do now, in that we were taking a building but of course at this time we were brand new, so it was a credibility play. So. Mm-hmm. We had to, build a data centre that looked like one, looked like a duck, quacked like a duck, is a duck kind of thing. Whereas the second one, we took a completely different approach, where we secured a piece of land. We were the first to deploy indirect adiabatic cooling at scale. So we effectively designed the data centre from the inside out. So we did that. That was really, really interesting. And then at that point in the development of the business, I was spending more and more time on the front end, helping on new business opportunities. So I then moved across into the sales team where I sit now. So I'm solutions director now. So I help with the technical aspects of all our new business opportunities that we do. Sort of the key point of liaison back to the operations and the design part of the business, to make sure they understand what we're proposing to deliver, and of course we can successfully deliver it. Look after our biggest customers from a relationship perspective, and then I've got a team of people that work for me doing similar across the rest of the customer base. That's over a long, very extended period of time. So there's been some great highlights. I mean, there's been some times where go back to the Met Police contract, and things don't always go as you would expect them to go. And I can always remember going down there to explain after one event, and I was the only person in the room not in a uniform.
It must have been interesting.
It was, yeah. Thoughts about leaving in an orange jumpsuit with handcuffs on did cross my mind at one point. But I've got to study later in life. I was lucky enough to go and study at INSEAD in France, one of the world's leading business schools. And my current roles enable me to travel extensively. I've worked in America, all over Europe. It's been really, really interesting.
And I think what you've highlighted there for us is a clear pathway, but the pathway is not straight.
Oh, absolutely.
So you left school 16, you've gone left, you've probably gone right, somewhere in the centre again, maybe left a bit and then right a bit, and then I think what you've highlighted just at the end is really interesting. So, and what I picked out of that is, learning experience is come with in different environments with different roles, and they're all just learning experiences. From your perspective, you'd see that to be true?
Very, very much so, and again, so different. You look at. I always remember the first time I got involved with the Met Police project. You have to keep reminding yourself that there could be people ringing from their homes where they think there's an intruder downstairs, or God forbid, anything of that nature. That system's not working properly. The right resources aren't set to where they need to be. So you take that on board, and that's a big thing to think about. Versus at the other end of the scale, I work with a big dairy company. We're not going to get Marks and Spencer's yogurt order out, which are two vastly different things, but they're both important in their own way.
Well, and I think that's the other thing that you've done great there, which is to kind of like bring the reality of really what our sector brings to the world. And sometimes I feel that we try and put a cape over this, but I think what you've done there is given us another couple of real life examples of how important DCs are to the broader industry, the world, and in the daily lives that we lead. So thank you for both of those. I want to bring you on to a couple of things that are close to my heart now, which is when I think about data centres, especially across the UK and Ireland, and actually more broadly across Europe, I think of two things at the minute. I think of power and availability, and then the impact of AI on our industry. What are you seeing in this world from those two aspects, and what's your thinking for the next maybe 2 to 5 years?
I think it's an interesting question in as much as there's kind of two sides to it from an AI perspective. AI is the industry generally is growing at a very, very rapid pace, and will continue to do so as we move forward. What AI is bringing is an even greater accelerator to the resources that we need and the demand that we need for these places. If you look at where data centers are now, they've grown historically from being positioned at let's call it the point of demand. So if you look at what the industry will call the flap D market, so Frankfurt, London, Amsterdam, Paris, and Dublin, the data centers in those respective countries don't necessarily these days need to be in a given location. The reason they've developed there is because in the early days that was where the demand was, and then they end up being, I would say, anchored in those locations, notably by the way that the hyperscalers operate networks, because they want to make the most of the ones that they've installed there, and that's led to these centres of data centre locations, if you like. Now, the challenge that brings is as it develops, AI is more power hungry. I mean, if I look back over the life of Virtus as a company, when I joined, there was 3 or 4 of us at the start. We had one data centre that we built that was 4 megawatts. We've got data halls in facilities today that are bigger than that. And at the time, we would look at a deal of a single megawatt as for our business at the time was a big deal. As we've grown and been successful, those deals have gone up, and they've gone from 1 to 5 to 10 to 20. And what we're seeing now, I think, in the future, people are going to be asking for hundreds of megawatts in possibly in a single deal in various locations, and that puts the pressure on those existing locations. The thing is, though, with AI is it might actually help in a strange way, in that it needs to learn. So AI works on models. It needs to be trained. Almost like a pet, I suppose, but in a much more complex way. In the way it learns is it sits and it runs and it examines vast data sets of responses and data, and from those it looks for links, and then it can formulate answers to questions. Now, in the learning phase, these large learning models, they don't need to be necessarily, let's say, at the point of use. Mm-hmm. So what it could give us going forward is the ability to locate in newer markets where the power is available, because the challenge that we have, the demand is here and it needs resolving quickly. But the things to help with that, such as upgrading power networks to deliver more power, isn't quick.
Yep.
Because we're in a situation where we can't deliver the power as quickly as it's needed. So what we must do is look at locations where there is power available, which might be away from the current locations. There's no reason why these large language models can't be deployed there, and then brought to closer to the point of use, or by doing those large language models in those locations, you're effectively creating new locations. So as we move forward, you can link those two things together.
So I think what you're describing to us there is almost it's a double-edged sword. It's a bit of a challenge, but actually there's a huge opportunity here when you think about, well, are we utilising our power? And let's just take the UK as an example. Is there further opportunity, for example, in the north? We've got capacity, we've got availability, we've got connection points in the northwest and the northeast, and even thinking further afield into Scotland to help support with the new legions of Gen AI that's landing on us as we speak. Is that really where you're thinking is as well, from not just a geography, but geography plus power plus connection availability?
Yes, I think it's almost a natural evolution in that what will happen is we all want to and the customers do as well. They always want to make the best use of the capacity that they have today in the locations that it is today. But there are going to be constraints moving forward, as I said before, predominantly around power. I think the other thing is that as we move forward and we look to be more sustainable, we need to look at what else we can do. And in a lot of the locations that we sit in today, the ability to reuse heat, for example, is difficult because there's not the infrastructure to connect to. Whereas if we're going to new locations, you can look at more integrated developments where you can, not only can you make use of what's there, you can also put some stuff back into the local area. I think that you're already starting to see data centres. There's been a number of announcements in Yorkshire, in the northeast, as you say, over towards Grimsby on the east of the country. So it's already starting to happen, and providing the connection points there and the powers there, there's no reason for more of that not to happen in the future.
Yeah, that's these. So we're now digging into kind of that. We're getting into the detail of what the impact could be in a local region, and not on my doorstep is quite a famous open closed commas whatever. But how far away are we from like really having a true ecosystem of DCs working alongside manufacturing across into maybe small villages, new townships? Can you see a road or a pathway to it?
I think there's early signs of it, and I think it's going to have to happen to tie the sustainability journeys together. I know, for example, in Dublin, where Amazon have got some data centres there where they're currently using some of the waste heat to supply resource to local businesses in terms, even if it's only in heating areas of factories, for example. So there's one example of that happening, and there are others where the big thing that would be of benefit to more than just the business is, can we start using things like local heat networks? It's a well-established technology. It's sustainable. It's very common in the Nordics. We don't have a lot of it in the UK, but I know I was talking to a guy at an event a couple of weeks ago where Bristol are insisting on having district heating in some new developments within the city, and that's going to need stuff to provide it. Now, it's not a massive data centre hub at the moment, but things like that might be another attraction as a reason to develop in that area where you can actually see you can do what you need to do from our business perspective, but you can also see an opportunity to reuse.
It sounds like we've got we're probably on the cusp, aren't we, of like new development. Sounds like Bristol's another great example of where maybe the planners are thinking further afield and ahead of, well, how can we shape all this to, one, because of, recent, I guess, transition of energy bills, number one, but more importantly, how do we drive down the carbon effect of what we're doing, not just to our country, but the kingdom, and then I guess the broader world as well. So we'll see how that pans out and plays out over the next period. But I think what you started to allude to here is, how can we be more cohesive? And I think it's probably on us. We sit here and we talk about this stuff, and it's great, but there's probably a PR job to be done. But in your mind, how can being more cohesive play out, and who would you see as the major players in that ecosystem?
I remember the first time this was explained to me. I wasn't familiar with the concept of district heating. I was at an event in the Nordics, and I was talking to a guy that ran a data center there, and he was explaining it to me at the time more as a commercial benefit than necessarily a sustainability one. Because the way in which he described it to me was, I pay the electricity company for the power that I consume, and then at the time he had an agreement, a commercial agreement, obviously, to supply waste heat to the authority. So he said, I was kind of getting double the money for every kilowatt hour, effectively.
Okay.
Not in pure monetary terms, but the way in which he described it. So I use the energy, and then I reuse it at no additional cost to myself, just by pushing the heat off into this network. And I think at the moment we're still an industry that is not familiar to a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Most people who read PR about the data center industry probably think, it's not. There's been programs on the BBC and all sorts of stuff about how much power we consume, etc. But if you take a step back, most people, I would argue, use data centers in one way or another. If you've got a smartphone, you're using a data center. If you watch Netflix, you'll be using a data center. And it's to us to educate people how important the services we supply are. And I've given two very simple examples, but there are much more serious ones than that. But it's about knowing that we're a service, that the world does not function without data centers. That is not an exaggeration. It is a digital world that we live in now, and we need to educate people. And by doing so, we can give them the potential of a career path that we were discussing earlier within the industry, but also how are we ever going to cohesively develop if people don't understand what we do and what we can potentially offer from a sustainability perspective versus what's going on in other environments, such as planning you touched on earlier on, and link those two things together. It won't be well served by two different elements. So let's say data centers on the one hand and developers on the other, not knowing about each other and the opportunity there, and therefore we're both going to end up competing for the same resources when in fact we can both use them and both benefit.
I think this is a fascinating point, isn't it? Because, data centers for me are the fourth utility. You can argue where they'd sit in that league table of importance, but none of the other three operate without a DC either. And there's an argument to say the DC wouldn't operate without the other three. So let's just put that out there. But I think what's been really interesting for us at Schneider Electric actually has been when we've gone out to market for our kind of intakes of graduates, what we found is in 60 to 70% of them, the most important thing for them was our sustainability brand and what we stand for in the world. And I think we should be really clear with young people that, this is something that's really important to us, to them, to the globe, because the world doesn't operate without it. I think you touched on a couple of great examples, but we can give more examples in healthcare. Police was another great one you mentioned, in defence and banking. So there are more and more and more out there. And I guess our mantra now is be the change you want to see. So, and this is really resonating with early talents as well. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how bringing early talents into our industry as well can help change that dynamic, and also almost be the voice for the next gen coming into our industry. So let's see where that takes us in the future. But just while I think about that, what is how do we change that PR narrative? What does it start with? How should it look?
I think that there are two elements to it. I think there's industry awareness, and what I mean by that is that's about getting involved with other businesses. And especially important that we get involved with government, because what will happen with sustainability, and there's already examples of this that can be seen on a daily basis. There'll be, with all industry comes legislation. That legislation needs to be well informed, because there's examples previously of how you can we discussed this on a panel I was on last week, where you may recall many years ago we were all told to drive diesel cars to lower the carbon impact, and so dutifully we all went out and bought a diesel car, and now it turns out that we were so focused on carbon that we weren't really thinking out loud about the other potential side effects, such as the particulates in the air. And so we tried to solve one problem, and in doing so we ended up almost worsening another one. So it's really important that I think there's a couple of things. One is, don't just focus on carbon. It's not all about carbon. It's massively important, but it's not all about carbon. It's also about zero waste to landfill. It's also about intelligent use of the resources that you've got, circularity. That's really important, and it's really important that we educate other industry bodies, and noticeably the government, so it's well understood. On the other side of this, I think it's important that we get out there and we talk to young people. I mean, at Virtus we participate in a digital futures program with UTC, which is UTC Heathrow, which is a special school in Northwood that focuses on science and engineering. And what we do is it's not just Virtus, it's some of our competitors and some of our suppliers as well. We go into the school regularly and we help them with challenges, with interview techniques. We tell them what we do. We did one recently, a couple of weeks ago, where students were challenged to build a wind-powered generator, and obviously you try and tie that in. But it's about offering that awareness to young people and presenting ourselves as a career option, because as we move forward, the best talent's going to be needed, and you're going to be competing for it against other industries with similar skill sets. You know, petrochemicals is probably one example. Our CEO always says, get the best people, they'll deliver the best service. And so it's really important that we offer people an understanding of what we do, the benefits a career path can bring, and hopefully secure those talents moving forward.
Well, it's not passed me by that Virtus do a pretty good job in terms of rewarding loyalty within your organisation. And again, this is maybe an interesting topic and a bit of a dichotomy for maybe some of the early careers who may think that, you know, job swapping, moving around a little bit gives them an experience quickly. But I wonder if you could just share with our listeners what you're doing to help on that retention journey for you.
So the key thing is investing in the staff to get the best from the staff, but also to give them those opportunities to grow. And so what we do a number of things. We've recently launched a scheme for formal education alongside your job. So you're allowed to choose some courses that you believe will be of benefit, and they might not necessarily be directly connected to what you do in your role today, but to equip you for other potential roles within the company in the future. So there's a program where you can do that. We'll give you time alongside your role to do that, obtain those formal qualifications, and hopefully grow within the company moving forward. But then we also need to recognise it's an interesting point. My kids are both grown up, and they're in jobs and they're in the early stages of their careers, and it's quite common when I speak to them and their friends that to your point, it's almost considered I'll do a couple of years here and a couple of years there, where it's not necessary. You don't have to do that. You can obtain experience and grow in the organisation that you're at. And we've recently launched a program to reward loyalty to the company. So we have now, if someone works with us for 5 years, they're given a 4-week sabbatical. So what they're able to do is it's a flexible period of 4 weeks that they can take alongside and over and above their annual holiday entitlement to get away and as a recognition for the work they've done, and also to give them a bit of a chance to recharge their batteries. And that increases to 6 weeks when you've done 10 years service. And I've literally just come back from my first 4-week sabbatical, where I spent some time travelling around Southeast Asia without having to worry about my day-to-day responsibilities at work, and also massively looking forward to next year when I do my 6-week one, where I'm going to go around Australia watching the British and Irish Lions play rugby. But it's a reward for the stuff you've done, and also, as I said, importantly, gives you a chance to refresh and yourself ready for the future challenges.
Well, hey, look, and these are all great points, aren't they? Because we do spend quite a bit of time about, well, how do we fill the skills gap in the industry? And so that's one topic. But then the retention piece, I think we probably don't talk about enough. And what you've described to us there is a retention method that you guys have come up with that's clearly making a difference. And the industry can be quite challenging. Let's be right, and demanding on both you as an individual and the teams and the organisation. So hearing that there are schemes out there that reward plus replenish in terms of your your energy and your kilojoules in your body and brain is quite refreshing to hear.
It's good. The other thing that's important about this is, let's be honest, it's a good industry to be in. We're well rewarded, for what we do, but in order to retain people, you do need more, because there are two ways of addressing it. You can get into an arms race with all your competitors where you offer X, they offer Y, and that's not good for anybody really, because you're just challenging each other and driving up everybody's costs. Or you come up with something that goes alongside that's a bit different, and maybe it's not offered in other organisations. And we're only at the start of that journey, but we've got some good things so far.
Well, I'm impressed. I'm least impressed that you're going to watch the rugby next year and I'm not. But anyway, we'll park that just for now. So a very interesting conversation this. But the one question I like to kind of leave our listeners with, and it's a perspective from your side, is what's the one message that you kind of want to leave our listeners with today in respect to AI, data centres and the future of our sector?
Embrace it. I think in short, embrace it. It's going to bring big challenges, but it's going to bring even bigger opportunities. And if it's executed correctly, it's going to make the world a better place, and it's going to hopefully make the world a safer place as well. The challenges there, it's so early in the journey. Alexa's a really great example. Most of us have got one or something similar in our house. It's a very low level example of AI, but it's something that's made a difference in the house. It's made lots of things. When you can't remember which bins you're putting out next week, for example.
Really important things in life.
Really important things in life. It's stuff like that you can check. But more importantly, it can learn and it can calculate and it can deliver far, far quicker than we will ever be able to. So what we need to do is make sure we deliver it, we embrace it, but we do it in a way that's sustainable, and a way that doesn't just deliver benefits within the technology industry, but also helps, with sustainability, possibly heating people's homes, possibly in use in vertical farming, and helping grow stuff all year round that perhaps normally you can only grow in the summer is a good example. And we're already seeing some good examples of this. There's a company in the UK called Deep Green, where they've got these containerised data centres which are more to deliver potentially in the future edge computing. But you put them, right in the middle of the city, right in the middle of the town. There's one in Exeter where the waste heat from that's used to heat the local swimming pool, which was at one point at risk of closure because of the cost of power. As things like now, that's positioned there. They use the waste heat to heat the pool, double benefit. And that's a small example. Our new campus that we're developing in Germany is very well connected to most of the Germany's renewable energy in the north that comes in from the wind farms. So we're looking to power the data centre predominantly from that, and it's that sort of thinking that I think is really important going forward.
David, thank you for your time today. I've really appreciated this conversation. It's been hugely insightful. We've spoken about so many different things. I mean, Gen AI, the power challenge we've got, and the geography surrounding that, and kind of closing out on, well, what does this ecosystem of solvers look like and how we're going to do it in the future. So thank you for sharing your time today.
Thank you.